leadership development is an intentional process, that's that word, intentional, in which one interacts with an experienced leader, producing transformation in the character and competencies. Characters kind of leaning into the emotional side of things, not just the hard skills, the competencies that increase their ability to influence people, outcomes, and culture. I'll leave that up there for just a second. What strikes a chord with you from this definition? This is just a working definition, something for us to build upon as we, are talking about leadership development. What are we talking about? But what strikes a chord with you from that definition?
I think the character piece, because we left that out, but that's a huge piece, is making sure that leaders have good character. I'd say that's probably more important than the competencies.
Yeah, you have the hard skills and soft skills in that, and they play off of each other. So, but in agreement, the character is number one. You want solid people. You want people of integrity. You want people that are known, and they are. You look at them and you say, oh yeah, I can follow this guy because this gal knows Jesus and walks with Jesus. That's who I want.
Yes, and part of that, the intentional process really could include the word relational. It is highly, highly relational. That's what we see in Jesus' ministry, and we see tremendous fruit when there's relationship. This isn't just a classroom environment, information dump. This is walking with someone, intentional process. So with that in mind, we like to talk about this leadership pipeline. And at the simplest form, it just gives a pathway. We actually at Connect Church, our church, we call it a leadership pathway because it just helps people identify what's your next step. The goal isn't to go through the whole pathway, and ours is actually flipped horizontal. It's not even vertical. It's just the goal isn't to go all the way through. The goal is to just identify whatever the person's gifts are with them and then help them grow in that, whatever that is. Everyone's going to need to learn to lead self. Some people are going to lead others. Maybe that's leading a team. Maybe it's leading a group. Maybe it's leading a kid's classroom. Then there are others who they're a gifted leader and other leaders would benefit from being invested in by them. And they learn to lead leaders. Some of those will learn to lead a ministry area, and then some learn to lead the church. This also creates a really practical pathway. If you have someone who wants to plant a church, you want to make sure that they know how to lead themselves, lead others, lead leaders, lead a ministry area before sending them out to lead a church. Otherwise, what's going to happen is if we try to skip a level or skip a step, we're shortchanging the person's development. It might solve our need, but it's not for their good. And someone's not going to be a good ministry area leader if they don't really know how to lead leaders. If someone can't lead themselves, they're going to struggle leading others. Make sense? So you might hear me use different terms. What we, kind of standard terminology, we call this like a member, a group member, or a team member. People leading others, those are leaders. Just keep it real simple. Someone who is leading leaders, we call them a coach. Someone who's leading a ministry area, we call a director. And then you might call, people leading the church, the senior leadership team or something of the like. That makes sense. You can choose the terminology for your church, but as you're thinking through it, you're going to want to make sure you're in some form or fashion discipling those who are leading themselves, discipling those who are leading others, discipling those who are leading leaders, etc. Okay. And I think something I didn't say earlier on, but I do want to make sure I am clear on. I think leadership development is a continuation of discipleship. I don't think it's the only continuation of discipleship. Just like we might want to disciple someone who has the gift of generosity or the gift of hospitality. we should also disciple those who have the gift of leadership. And this is a tool, a framework to use to do just that. Does that make sense? Here's let me show you one other thing real quick. So this is a little bit more fleshed out kind of view of the leadership pipeline. So you got lead self, lead others, lead leaders, etc. We call them, member, leader, coach. If Joe is somebody who's new, who comes and shows up at your church for the first time, what this framework does is what it'll do is it helps Joe know what his next step could be. Okay. It helps the system that'll help Joe kind of flow from one point to the next. We're going to talk about all these things. The content is how Joe grows. It's the literal, like the training material. What are you actually talking about in these intentional, conversations you're having? And then the people, this is how Joe goes from one level to the next. It's the relational discipleship piece, okay? And we're going to kind of hit on these elements throughout the, our conversation. But what this does, what the leadership pipeline does, is it helps someone who shows up at your church know what their next step is and grow in a biblical lifestyle of leadership. Often in the church, what we gravitate to, if your experience is anything like mine has been, is we try to find people who can kind of turn a ministry widget or solve a pain point for us. Like, oh, we've got a shortage over here, so we need to get people to kind of fill the slots, and then we're going to teach them how to do our thing so that the ministry can run, the church can run. Has anyone been a part of a church like that before? Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how a lot of churches go, right? I want to challenge us to think a little bigger, and maybe these people, they're going to help serve on our teams for an hour or two, maybe 3 a week. But think of all the hours that they're at work and at home and in the community. What if we as a church discipled people in a biblical lifestyle of leadership, and they followed Jesus at home and at work and in the community when they're coaching sports, etc. And they're using the gifts God's given them to extend their influence for the sake of Jesus in all spheres of life.